The child hadn't cried in 19 days. Not when the hunger gnawed through her belly like a living thing. Not when the summer sun blistered her small shoulders raw. Not when the good people of Silver Creek stepped over her like she was nothing but dust on their boots. But on the 20th day, when Wyatt Callahan knelt down on those splintered steps and asked, "Where's your mama, little one?" Rosie McAllister did something she swore she'd never do again. She told the truth. Stay with us until the very end. Drop a comment with your city so we can see how far Rosie's story travels. Hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what happens next. The Montana summer of 1879 had a way of cooking a man's patience right out of him. Wyatt Callahan felt it in his bones as he rode into Silver Creek dust, caking his throat sweat, carving rivers through the grime on his face. 4 years of running, 4 years of looking over his shoulder, 4 years of waking up in strange towns with his dead daughter's name on his lips. He was tired. God, he was tired. Easy, boy. He patted his horse's neck as they approached the main street. Just supplies. Then we move on, always moving on. The town wasn't much. A saloon with swinging doors that had seen better days. A general store with faded letters. A church steeple reaching toward heaven like it was begging for rain. Hitching posts lined the street where horses stood with their heads down, defeated by the heat. Wyatt tied his horse outside the general store and climbed the 3 steps to the door. That's when he saw her. A child. Small. Red hair matted and tangled the color of rust in dying sunlight. She sat pressed against the wall beside the door, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped around them like she was holding herself together. He'd seen beggars before. Orphans, too. The frontier was full of them, children lost to fever, to violence, to the simple cruelty of a land that didn't care who it took. He walked past her. Inside the store was cooler, darker. A heavy woman behind the counter looked up with flat eyes. "Help you?" "Coffee, flour, bacon, whatever jerky you got." She moved slowly, pulling items from shelves, and Wyatt found himself glancing back toward the door. "That child outside." The words came out before he could stop them. "She belonged to someone." The woman's face tightened. "The McAllister girl. Father died near a month back. Fool fell from scaffolding at the new church, broke his neck clean through. And her mother, dead years ago, childbirth, I heard." Wyatt felt something cold settle in his chest. "So she's just sitting there." "Been sitting there 23 days now." The woman slapped his supplies on the counter. "Waiting for her daddy to come back. Someone ought to tell her he ain't coming, but nobody wants that job. $2.40. He paid without speaking, gathered his things, walked toward the door. The child hadn't moved. Up close, he could see more. The thinness of her wrists, the hollows under her eyes, blisters on her bare feet cracked and bleeding. She wore a dress that might have been yellow once, now faded to the color of old bone. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Amber, like honey held up to light. And empty. So empty it hurt to look at. "Keep walking," he told himself. "Ain't your concern. Nothing here is your concern. You stay, you plant roots," and then he kept walking, made it all the way to his horse, loaded the supplies, put his foot in the stirrup. "Mr. Her voice was small, cracked from disuse. He turned. She hadn't moved from her spot, but she was looking at him now, really looking. "You dropped something." He glanced down. A coin lay in the dust, a penny probably fallen from his pocket. "Keep it," he said. "Don't want your charity." The words came sharp, surprising him. "Just telling you what I saw." He picked up the penny, looked at it, looked at her. "Walk away, Wyatt. For God's sake, walk away." "When's the last time you ate?" She didn't answer. Her jaw set in a hard line, stubborn as stone. "I asked you a question, girl. And I ain't answering it. Don't need your help. Don't need nobody's help." He should have been angry. Should have mounted up and ridden out and never thought of her again. Instead, he found himself tying his horse back to the rail. Found himself walking into the general store again. Found himself buying bread and cheese and dried apples and a canteen of water. When he came back out, she was still there. still hadn't moved. He sat down on the steps. Not next to her, that would spook her, but close enough. He set the food between them. "I ain't eating your food," she said. "Didn't say you had to." "Then why'd you buy it? Maybe I'm hungry." "You already got supplies." He bit into the bread, chewed slowly, said nothing. Minutes passed. The sun beat down. Somewhere a dog barked. A wagon rattled by the driver, not even glancing at the child who'd become part of the scenery. "I ain't a beggar." Her voice was quieter now. Pa always said beggars got no pride. Eating food someone offers ain't begging. It's accepting kindness. Ain't no such thing as kindness. People want something. Always want something. Wyatt set down the bread, turned to look at her fully for the first time. "How old are you? 8? Almost 9? And you've already figured out that people always want something. Figured it out watching this town walk past me for 23 days. Her voice didn't waver. "First week they brought food, felt good about themselves. Second week they stopped. Third week they stopped looking. Now they cross the street so they don't have to see me at all." She reached for the cheese, bit into it with the careful control of someone who'd learned that eating too fast made you sick. "This town killed my pa," she said between bites. "Oh, they say he fell. Accident, they say. But I saw them up there. Saw Mr. Brennan and Mr. Jacobs. They was arguing with Pa, pushing him. Then he fell." Wyatt went still. "You telling me your father was murdered?" "I'm telling you what I saw. Told the sheriff, too." "Know what he said?" She mimicked a man's deep voice. "Child's imagination. Grief makes people see things." Then he patted my head and walked away. The bread turned to saw white in Wyatt's mouth. "Where you been sleeping?" "Here. Under the porch when it rains." "And nobody, not a single soul in this town offered you a bed?" "Mrs. Thornton at the boarding house lets me wash up sometimes, gives me scraps when she remembers." Rosie's jaw tightened. "I don't need more than that. Pa's coming back." "Your pa's dead, child." The words came out harder than he intended. He saw her flinch, saw the armor crack for just a second before she rebuilt it. "I know that." Her voice was a whisper. "I know he's buried in the churchyard. I know he ain't coming back. But if I leave these steps, then it's real. Then I got nothing left of him. This is where he told me to wait. So I wait." Something broke inside Wyatt's chest. Something he'd kept locked away for 4 years. He saw Lily in her eyes. His Lily who'd been 5 when the fire took her. 5 years old and calling for her papa while the flames ate the house, and he fought through them too late. Always too late. Don't, he told himself. Don't let her in. You let her in, you'll lose her too. That's how it works. That's how it always works. "What's your name?" he heard himself ask. Rosie McAllister." "I'm Wyatt." She looked at him with those amber eyes, and he saw the calculation there. The weighing. 8 years old, and already she'd learned to measure people the way gunfighters measured each other. "You ain't from here," she said. "No." "Where you from?" "Everywhere, nowhere." "That ain't an answer." "It's the only one I got." She finished the cheese, reached for an apple. Her hands were shaking slightly, and he realized it wasn't hunger anymore. It was exhaustion. 23 days of heat and fear, and the slow death of hope. "Why'd you stop?" she asked. "What? Everyone else walks past. Why'd you stop?" Wyatt looked out at the street. At the people who kept their eyes forward, who'd turned a dying child into part of the scenery. "Because someone should have," he said finally. "Because someone should have 3 weeks ago." "That ain't an answer either." Maybe it's the truth. Night came slow and hot, the kind of heat that didn't break even after the sun went down. Wyatt should have ridden out hours ago. Should have been miles from Silver Creek by now, putting distance between himself and everything that reminded him of what he'd lost. Instead, he sat on the boarding house porch across the street watching the general store, watching the small figure who refused to move from those steps. "She's a stubborn one," He turned. A woman stood in the doorway, late 50s, gray hair pulled back tight, eyes sharp as broken glass. "Mrs. Thornton." "That's right, and you're the stranger who's been sitting with the McAllister girl all day." She crossed her arms. "What's your angle?" "Don't have one." "Everyone's got an angle, mister. This town learned that the hard way." Wyatt faced her directly. "I'm just a man who's tired of watching people pretend they don't see a child dying in front of them. We see her just fine. Seeing and doing are two different things." "And which one are you guilty of?" Her jaw tightened. "I got a boarding house to run. Mouths to feed that can pay. I can't take in every stray that wanders through." "She ain't a stray. She's a child. A child whose father might have been murdered in your precious town." The silence stretched. Mrs. Thornton's face went pale. "Who told you that?" "She did. Says she saw two men push her father. Says she told the sheriff. Says nobody believed her." "The sheriff investigated." The sheriff patted her head and walked away. "That ain't investigating. That's covering." Mrs. Thornton glanced toward the store, toward Rosie's small silhouette in the gathering dark. If what she says is true... She stopped. Started again. Brennan and Jacobs are the two wealthiest men in Silver Creek. They own half the land, most of the cattle. Nobody goes against them. Nobody except an 8-year-old girl. An 8-year-old girl who nobody believes. Thunder rumbled in the distance, the first storm in weeks pushing down from the mountains. Wyatt smelled rain on the wind. "Storm's coming," he said. "Bad one by the feel of it. She won't leave those steps." Mrs. Thornton's voice was quieter now. "I've tried. Others have tried. She just sits there waiting for something that ain't coming." Wyatt was already moving, crossing the street, as the first fat drops of rain began to fall. By the time he reached the store, the sky had opened up sheets of water, turning the street to mud. Rosie was still there, curled against the wall, arms over her head, shaking as lightning split the sky. "Come on!" He held out his hand. "Porch won't keep you dry tonight." "I have to wait." "Your pa ain't coming back in a storm, girl. And he wouldn't want you drowning while you waited." Another crack of lightning, closer this time. She flinched, pressing harder against the wall. "Rosie!" He knelt in the mud rain, soaking through his coat. "I know about waiting for people who ain't coming. Spent 4 years doing it myself. And I'm telling you, your pa would want you safe. He'd want you warm and dry and alive. You dying on these steps don't honor him. It just means the world took one more thing it had no right to take." She looked at him. Rain streamed down her face, mixing with tears she'd probably deny. "Why do you care?" "Because you have her eyes," he thought. "Because you're stubborn like she was. Because I couldn't save her. But maybe, because I do," he said. "That's all I got. Because I do." Her hand slipped into his. Small. Cold. Trembling. He carried her across the street, through the mud and the rain, up onto Mrs. Thornton's porch, where the older woman waited with towels and a look on her face that Wyatt couldn't read. "Just for tonight," Mrs. Thornton said, but she was already wrapping Rosie in warm cloth, already leading her inside. Wyatt stood on the porch, dripping, watching them go. Right out the voice in his head said, "First light. Before you get attached. Before it hurts." But he didn't move. Inside, Rosie McAllister was eating hot soup by a fire, still shaking, still wary, still the angriest, saddest, bravest child he'd ever seen. And Wyatt Callahan, who'd spent 4 years running from ghosts, found he couldn't take another step away. "Mr. Mrs. Thornton appeared in the doorway. "I've got a room. Nothing fancy, but it's dry." "How much?" $1 a night. 50 cents if you help with chores." He reached into his pocket, pulled out what coins he had. "I'll take a week." Her eyebrows rose. "Thought you were just passing through." "So did I." He went inside, leaving the storm behind, not knowing that in the morning everything would change again, that Rosie's amber eyes would find his across the breakfast table, and she'd say the words that would chain him to this place forever. "The men who killed my pa, they're coming to the store today. I can show you." And God help him, he would follow her. Because some chains Wyatt Callahan was learning weren't prisons at all. Some chains were the only thing keeping you from falling apart. Morning light found Wyatt at the breakfast table, coffee going cold in his hands when Rosie appeared in the doorway. She looked different after a night of real sleep, still thin, still wary, but something in her eyes had shifted, not softer, sharper. "They're coming today," she said. Wyatt set down his cup. "Who?" "Mr. Brennan and Mr. Jacobs. They come every Tuesday. Check the store books, collect their money." She moved to the window, pressing her face close to the glass. "Pa called them vultures, said they'd pick this town clean if nobody stopped them. And you think they killed your father?" "I don't think. I know." She turned to face him. "I was hiding in the church rafters that day. Pa didn't know I followed him. He was up on the scaffolding working on the steeple. Then they came. Started yelling about money Pa owed them. Said he'd pay one way or another." Wyatt's jaw tightened. What happened next? Mr. Brennan grabbed Pa's arm. Pa tried to pull away. Then Mr. Jacobs, her voice cracked. He pushed, hard, and Pa just fell. "Did they see you?" "No, I stayed quiet, stayed still." Her hands were shaking. "Pa always said that's what rabbits do when hawks are circling. Stay still, stay quiet, wait for the danger to pass. That's what you've been doing these past weeks, staying still." I was scared. If they knew what I saw. She didn't finish. Wyatt stood cross to where she stood, knelt down so he was eye level with her. "You should be scared. Those men sound dangerous." "I know. So why are you telling me why now?" Those amber eyes met his steady, despite the fear beneath. "Because you stopped. Because you didn't walk past. Because maybe—" She swallowed hard. "Maybe you're not afraid of them like everyone else. I'm a stranger, Rosie. Nobody here owes me anything and I don't owe them. I could ride out today and never look back." "But you won't." It wasn't a question. "You paid for a week. Smart. Too smart for 8 years old. Show me," he said. "Show me these men." They waited by the window of the boarding house, Rosie pressed against Wyatt's side, like she belonged there. Mrs. Thornton moved around them, setting out breakfast for other guests, saying nothing, but watching everything. An hour passed. 2. Then Rosie's whole body went rigid. There. 2 men rode down to the main street on horses worth more than most families earned in a year. The first was heavy red-faced sweat staining his expensive shirt. The second was leaner, with dead eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "The fat one's Brennan," Rosie whispered. "The other's Jacobs." They dismounted outside the general store. Brennan laughed at something Jacobs said, a big booming sound that carried across the street. Then they walked inside like they owned the place, because they probably did. "Has anyone else in this town seen what you saw?" Wyatt asked. "No, just me." "And the sheriff, you're sure you told him everything?" "Told him twice. Second time he said if I kept spreading lies, he'd have me sent to the orphanage in Helena." Her voice went small. "I stopped talking after that." Wyatt felt rage building in his chest, cold and sharp, the kind he hadn't felt in years, the kind he'd buried when he buried Clara and Lily. "Stay here," he said. "Where are you going?" "To introduce myself." "Wyatt!" He was already out the door. The general store smelled like tobacco and old leather. Brennan and Jacobs stood at the counter, papers spread between them, while the store owner, a nervous man with thinning hair, nodded at whatever they were saying. "Gentlemen," Wyatt kept his voice easy. "Hot day for business." 3 heads turned. Brennan's eyes narrowed. Jacobs smiled that dead smile. "Don't believe I've seen you before," Brennan said. "You new in town? Just passing through. Most folks who pass through don't stop to chat. Most folks aren't curious about how things work around here. Wyatt picked up a can of peaches, examined it. Heard some interesting things since I arrived. That's so. Jacobs moved away from the counter. Casual, calculated. Small towns love gossip. Half of it's lies, the other half's exaggeration. And which half is the story about Thomas McAllister? The temperature in the room dropped. Brennan's face went from red to white in seconds. The store owner suddenly found something fascinating to study on the floor. McAllister was a tragedy, Brennan said carefully. Man fell from scaffolding. Terrible accident. That's what I heard. Also heard his daughter saw something different. Jacobs laughed a harsh, ugly sound. The girl, she's half wild with grief. Been sitting on the store steps for weeks babbling nonsense. Nobody believes a word she says. Maybe nobody wanted to believe. Silence. Heavy and dangerous. Brennan stepped forward. Mr. I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but this is our town. We built it. We run it. And we don't take kindly to strangers stirring up trouble. I'm not stirring anything, just asking questions. Questions get people hurt around here. Jacobs's hand moved to his belt, not quite touching his gun, but close enough. Especially strangers who don't know when to ride on. Wyatt met his eyes, held them, let the silence stretch until it ached. I appreciate the advice, he said finally. I'll keep it in mind. He bought the peaches, nodded to the store owner, and walked out into the sunlight. His hands were steady. His heart was not. He'd spent 4 years avoiding exactly this confrontation involvement, the tangled mess of caring about something enough to fight for it. And now, in less than 24 hours, an 8-year-old girl with amber eyes had pulled him right back into the fire. Ride out, the voice said again. Tonight. Before it's too late. But when he looked across the street, Rosie was standing on the boarding house porch, watching him with an expression that broke something inside his chest. Hope. Despite everything, hope. He couldn't destroy that. Couldn't be one more person who walked past. God help him, he was staying. The next 3 days were a careful dance. Wyatt helped around the boarding house, fixing a broken step, mending fence posts, whatever Mrs. Thornton needed, while keeping his eyes open and his ears sharp. The town talked. Small places always did. He learned that Brennan owned the bank and most of the land east of town. Jacobs ran the cattle operation and had a reputation for dealing harshly with anyone who crossed him. Together they controlled Silver Creek like a pair of wolves controlling a flock. And Thomas McAllister had owed them money, a lot of it. He was building furniture to pay it off. Mrs. Thornton told Wyatt one evening, her voice low. Beautiful work. Best I ever saw. But it wasn't fast enough for them. They wanted their money now. So they killed him. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. She looked at him for a long moment. You're digging in dangerous ground, Mr. Callahan. Brennan and Jacobs have ruined people for less than what you did in that store. Let them try. You're either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. He glanced toward the stairs where Rosie had gone to bed an hour ago. She's telling the truth, isn't she, about what she saw? Mrs. Thornton was quiet for a long time. Then, Thomas McAllister was a good man, honest, hard-working. He didn't deserve what happened to him, neither does his daughter. Then why hasn't anyone helped her? Because we're scared. The admission cost her something. He could see it in the way her shoulders tightened. Because standing up to those men means losing everything. Our homes, our businesses, maybe our lives. She met his eyes. It's easy to judge when you've got nothing to lose. I've got plenty to lose. You're a drifter, a stranger. You could ride out tomorrow and never think about this place again. Wyatt thought about Lily, about Clara, about 4 years of running from a grief that followed him like a shadow. Some things are harder to leave than you'd think, he said. On the 4th day, Rosie stopped pushing him away. She found him in the stable brushing down his horse and stood in the doorway for a full minute before speaking. You're still here. Appears so. Most people leave by now. He didn't stop brushing. I'm not most people. She moved closer, watched his hands work. Pa used to do that, said horses could feel when you were angry or sad, said they needed gentle hands and patient hearts. Your pa was right. He was right about a lot of things. Her voice wobbled. I miss him. Wyatt stopped, set down the brush, turned to face her. I know you do. Do you know what it's like to... She stopped, swallowed hard. Everyone says it gets easier. That time heals. But it doesn't. It just gets different. The hurt moves to a different place, but it doesn't go away. No, it doesn't. How do you know? The question hung between them. Wyatt felt the old walls rise, the instinct to deflect, to change the subject, to protect himself from the vulnerability of truth. But she'd been brave enough to share her pain. Maybe he owed her the same. I had a daughter, he said quietly. Her name was Lily. She was 5 years old. Rosie's eyes widened. What happened? Fire. Someone set our house ablaze while we slept. My wife, Clara, she got Lily to the window, passed her to me. But the floor gave out before Clara could climb through. His voice went rough. I held my daughter and watched my wife burn, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to stop it. The men who did it. I killed 2 of them. The third got away. He met her eyes. I've been running ever since, afraid he'll find me, afraid I'll get close to someone and they'll pay the price for knowing me. Rosie was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something that broke him. She took his hand. I'm sorry about your family, she said. And I'm sorry you've been running, but maybe, she squeezed his fingers, maybe you've run far enough. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that the danger was real, that getting close to him was the worst thing she could do, but the words wouldn't come, because for the first time in 4 years, he didn't want to run. The men who killed your pa, he said instead. We're going to make them pay. How? I don't know yet, but I promise you, Rosie, I promise on my daughter's grave they will answer for what they did. She didn't flinch at the intensity in his voice, didn't pull away from the fire in his eyes. Okay, she said simply. I believe you. 3 words. That's all it took to change everything. That night, Sheriff Jonas Webb came to the boarding house. Wyatt was on the porch when he saw the star glinting in the lamplight. Webb was a big man running to fat with the tired eyes of someone who'd stopped caring about justice long ago. Mr. Callahan, Webb mounted the steps heavily. Word is you've been asking questions around town. That illegal? Depends on the questions. I asked about Thomas McAllister, about how he died, about why a little girl's been sleeping on store steps for 3 weeks with nobody lifting a finger to help her. Webb's expression didn't change. McAllister's death was investigated, ruled an accident. By who? By me. And you talked to all the witnesses, examined the scene, looked into his finances, and who might benefit from him being gone. A muscle twitched in Webb's jaw. I did my job. Did you talk to his daughter? Really talk to her? Because she told me she saw Brennan and Jacobs push her father off that scaffolding. She's a child, a grief-stricken child with an imagination. She's a witness, the only witness, and you dismissed her because believing her would mean going up against the 2 most powerful men in this county. Webb stepped closer, close enough that Wyatt could smell the whiskey on his breath. Let me give you some advice, friend. Free of charge. His voice dropped low. This town runs the way it runs. People who accept that get along just fine. People who don't... He shrugged. Well, accidents happen. Just ask Thomas McAllister. Is that a threat, Sheriff? It's a fact of life. Wyatt didn't back down, didn't break eye contact. Here's a fact for you, he said quietly. I've buried a wife and a daughter. I've killed men who deserved killing and some who maybe didn't. I've spent 4 years with nothing to lose and no one to care whether I lived or died. He stepped forward until they were nearly touching. You don't scare me, Webb. Neither do Brennan and Jacobs. And if you think I'm going to ride out and leave that little girl to the mercy of the men who murdered her father, you've badly misread the situation." Webb held his ground for a long moment. Then slowly he stepped back. "Have it your way," he said. "But don't say I didn't warn you." He left without looking back. Wyatt watched him go, heart-pounding hands aching for a gun he'd sworn never to draw again. Behind him, the door creaked open. "I heard." Rosie's voice was small. "He's going to tell them, isn't he, Brennan and Jacobs? He's going to tell them you're a threat." "Probably." "Then what happens?" Wyatt turned to face her. In the lamplight, she looked even younger than her 8 years, a child who'd already seen too much, survived too much. "Then we find out what kind of men they really are," he said. "And we make sure we're ready when they show their true colors." You don't think I'm doing this alone, do you?" He managed a small smile. "You're the one with the evidence, the one who saw what happened. We're in this together now." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite trust, that would take longer to build, but something close to it. "Nobody's ever said that to me before. Together. Get used to it." She almost smiled. Almost. It was a start. The next morning, everything changed. Wyatt was helping Mrs. Thornton in the kitchen when a rider came tearing into town, horse-lathered and heaving the man on its back, shouting loud enough to be heard 3 blocks away. "Elijah Crane! Someone fetch Elijah Crane! There's been a fire at the north pasture." Wyatt moved to the window, watched people spill into the street, watched the chaos of a small town facing crisis. "Who's Elijah Crane?" he asked. "Biggest rancher in the county. Owns 10,000 acres north of here." Mrs. Thornton wiped her hands on her apron. "Good man, fair. One of the few who doesn't bow to Brennan and Jacobs. And now his pasture's on fire. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say?" Wyatt grabbed his hat. "Where's this ranch?" 8 miles north, but you can't—" He was already out the door. He rode hard, pushing his horse to its limits, following the column of black smoke rising against the summer sky. The smell hit him first, that acrid, choking stench that lived in his nightmares. Then the sight of men fighting flames with shovels and wet blankets trying to save what they could. A tall man in his 60s stood at the center of it all, directing the effort with military precision. His face was black with soot, his voice hoarse from shouting, but his eyes were clear and sharp. "You Elijah Crane." Wyatt dismounted, already moving toward the fire line. "Who's asking?" "Someone who knows how fires start, and how they don't." Crane looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Grab a shovel. We'll talk when this is done." They worked side by side for hours, beating back flames that seemed determined to consume everything in their path. By the time the fire was contained, Wyatt's hands were blistered, his lungs burned, and his body ached in ways he'd forgotten were possible. But the pasture was saved. Mostly. "You've got a good arm," Crane said, passing him a canteen. "And you're no stranger to this kind of work. My family had a spread in Kansas. Before." "Before what?" Wyatt didn't answer. Didn't have to. Crane nodded slowly. "I've seen your kind before. Men running from something. Usually something that deserves running from." He took back the canteen. "But today, you ran toward a fire instead of away. That tells me something." "What does it tell you?" "That maybe you're tired of running." Crane gestured toward the blackened pasture. "This wasn't an accident. I've got enemies who'd love to see me ruined. Men who've been waiting for an excuse to make a move." "Brennan and Jacobs." Crane's eyebrows rose. "You know them." "We've met." "Then you know what they're capable of." He studied Wyatt's face. "I'm short-handed. Lost 2 men last month. One quit, one got run out of town for speaking against the wrong people. I need someone I can trust. Someone who isn't afraid to stand up when it matters. You don't know anything about me. I know you rode 8 miles to help a stranger fight a fire. I know you've got the hands of a working man and the eyes of someone who's lost something precious." Crane extended his hand. "That's enough for me. What do you say?" Wyatt thought about Rosie, about justice, about the promise he'd made on his daughter's grave. He shook Crane's hand. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow. I've got a foreman's cabin sitting empty. 2 rooms, solid roof close to the main house." Crane paused. "Big enough for a man and a child if you're thinking what I think you're thinking." Wyatt stared at him. "How did you—" "Mrs. Thornton's my cousin. She sent word this morning about a stranger who wouldn't leave the McAllister girl's side." A ghost of a smile crossed his weathered face. "Thomas McAllister was a friend of mine, a good friend. If his daughter needs a home, I'd consider it a privilege to have her on my land." Something loosened in Wyatt's chest, something that had been tight for 4 years. "I need to ask her first. It's her choice." "As it should be." Crane nodded toward his horse. "Go, ask. I'll expect you both tomorrow." Wyatt rode back to Silver Creek faster than he'd left it. He found Rosie on the boarding house porch sitting in the same defensive curl she'd sat in for 23 days. But when she saw him, she stood. "You came back." "Told you I would." "People say a lot of things." "I'm not people." He dismounted, climbed the steps, knelt in front of her. "I have a question for you, Rosie McAllister, and I need you to answer honestly." Her chin lifted. "I always answer honestly." "If you had a choice, a real choice, would you come with me? Leave this town, start somewhere new, where nobody knows what happened, where you could go to school and learn to ride horses and have a room of your own?" She didn't answer right away. Those amber eyes searched his face, looking for the lie, the trap, the disappointment waiting to spring. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you deserve it. Because your father would want it. Because—" He swallowed hard. "Because I've been alone for 4 years and I'm tired of it. And maybe, just maybe, we could be not alone together." Tears welled in her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. "It wouldn't be easy," she said. "I'm difficult. I argue. I don't trust people. I'll probably make your life miserable." "Probably." "And I won't call you Pa. Not ever. My pa is dead. You're not him." "I'm not trying to be." "Then what would you be?" Wyatt thought about it. Really thought. "Someone who stays," he said. "Someone who shows up. Someone who fights for you even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." He took her hand, small, calloused, trembling. "Whatever you want to call that, that's what I'll be." She stared at their joined hands, then up at his face. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay. I'll come with you." A single tear escaped trailing down her cheek. "But if you leave me, if you disappear like everyone else?" "I won't." "How do I know?" Wyatt pulled something from his pocket. A small wooden figure, a rabbit carved with loving detail. The only thing he'd taken from the ashes of his old life. "This was my daughter's," he said. "She called it Mr. Hop. It was her favorite thing in the world." He pressed it into Rosie's palm. "I've never let anyone else touch it. Never even shown it to anyone. But I'm giving it to you now, as a promise, as proof that I'm not going anywhere." Rosie looked at the rabbit, at him, at the rabbit again. Then she did something that broke every wall he'd built around his heart. She hugged him. Fierce, desperate. The embrace of a child who'd forgotten what safety felt like and was just now remembering. Wyatt held her tight, feeling her small body shake with sobs she'd been holding back for 23 days. And he made a silent vow to her, to himself, to the ghost of the daughter he'd failed to save. This one he promised. This one I'll protect, whatever it takes. Behind them, Mrs. Thornton watched from the doorway, tears streaming down her face. And somewhere in town, Brennan and Jacobs were about to learn that some battles couldn't be won with money or threats. Some battles were won by ordinary people who simply refused to give up. 3 weeks at the Crane Ranch changed Rosie in ways Wyatt hadn't expected. She smiled now, not often, not easily, but real smiles that reached her amber eyes. She ate regular meals, gained weight, lost some of the haunted shadows under her cheekbones. And she talked. Lord, did she talk. Wyatt, why do horses sleep standing up? Wyatt, what's that bird called, Wyatt? Can I learn to rope cattle? Wyatt, Mrs. Crane says, I should wear dresses, but pants are better for riding, don't you think? He answered every question, even the ones he didn't know the answers to. You're good with her, Ruth Crane said one evening watching Rosie chase fireflies in the yard. Patient. Most men wouldn't bother. Most men haven't lost what I've lost. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, Elijah told me about your family. The fire. I'm sorry. It was 4 years ago. Grief doesn't keep calendars. She turned to face him. I was skeptical when Elijah brought you here. A stranger with no past, he'd talk about taking in another man's child. It seemed wrong somehow. And now I see the way she looks at you, like you're the first solid ground she's found in a month of drowning. Ruth's voice softened. That kind of trust isn't given lightly. Don't you dare betray it. I won't. See that you don't. She walked back inside, leaving Wyatt alone with thoughts that grew heavier each day. Brennan and Jacobs hadn't made a move yet. No threats, no warnings, no midnight visits. The silence should have been comforting. Instead, it felt like the calm before a summer storm pressure building waiting to break. You're thinking too loud. Rosie appeared beside him, a jar of fireflies glowing in her hands. Your face gets all scrunchy when you worry. I don't get scrunchy. You do. Like this. She screwed up her face in an exaggerated grimace. That's not what I look like. It's exactly what you look like. She held up the jar. I caught 11. Mrs. Crane says if you wish on a firefly it might come true, but you have to let them go after, or the wish turns bad. What did you wish for? She was quiet for a moment, then so soft he almost missed it. I wished the bad men would go away, so we could stay here forever. Wyatt knelt beside her. We're going to stay, Rosie. I promise. But they're still out there. Brennan and Jacobs. They're still walking around like they didn't kill my pa. Her voice hardened. That's not fair. No, it's not. So what are we going to do about it? He didn't have an answer. Not yet. But looking at her face in the firefly glow, he made himself another promise. He would find one. The answer came 3 days later, wearing a dusty traveling dress and carrying a leather satchel filled with papers. My name is Catherine Wells, the woman said, standing in Elijah Crane's parlor like she owned it. I'm an investigator with the Territorial Attorney's Office in Helena, and I have some questions about Thomas McAllister's death. Wyatt felt his heart lurch. How did you know to come here? She smiled sharp and knowing. A little bird sent a letter, detailed everything the alleged murder, the witnesses who were dismissed, the sheriff who refused to investigate. Very compelling reading. Wyatt glanced at Ruth, who suddenly found her needlework fascinating. You? He asked. Someone had to do something. Ruth didn't look up. You were taking too long. Catherine Wells sat down without being invited. I've already spoken with Sheriff Webb. He was uncooperative. Claimed the investigation was thorough, the death was accidental, and anyone saying otherwise was spreading lies. And you believed him. I believe evidence, Mr. Callahan, not stories. She pulled papers from her satchel. Thomas McAllister owed Brennan and Jacobs $3,000, a considerable sum. He was working it off through labor building furniture, doing carpentry work. According to the agreement, he had 2 more years to pay. So they had no reason to kill him, Wyatt said flatly. On the contrary, they had every reason. Catherine spread the papers across the table. The land Thomas McAllister was living on, it wasn't theirs. It belonged to him. A small parcel, yes, but it sits directly between Brennan's Eastern holdings and Jacobs's cattle operation. If they could acquire it, they could combine their properties. Elijah cut in, understanding dawning on his face. Create the largest single spread in the territory, worth roughly $50,000 more than either property alone. Catherine's eyes were cold. 3,000 debt versus 50,000 gain. The math isn't complicated. But Thomas wouldn't sell, Ruth said quietly. He told me once that land was his legacy for Rosie. He'd die before he let them take it. The words hung in the air. He did die, Wyatt said, and now Rosie's his heir. Catherine nodded. Which brings us to the real problem. With Thomas dead and Rosie a minor child with no legal guardian. She has a guardian, me. You have no legal standing, Mr. Callahan. You're not her relative. You haven't filed adoption papers. In the eyes of the law, Rosie McAllister is an orphan ward of the territory. Catherine's expression was grim, and 3 days ago a man named Victor Dunn filed a petition in Helena claiming to be her maternal uncle. The name hit Wyatt like a fist. I've never heard of any Victor Dunn. Neither had Thomas apparently, but Dunn has letters supposedly from Rosie's mother acknowledging him as family. He's requesting emergency custody, claiming the child is living in unsuitable conditions with a stranger of questionable character. That's a lie. I don't doubt it, but lies have a way of becoming truth when enough money backs them. Catherine gathered her papers. Dunn is connected to Brennan and Jacobs. I can't prove it yet, but the timing is too convenient to be coincidental. So they can't buy the land, so they're trying to steal the heir. Elijah's voice was thunderous. They'll get custody of Rosie, claim her inheritance, and sell her father's land to themselves. That's my theory, yes. Wyatt's hands were shaking. With rage, with fear, with the terrible certainty that he was about to lose another child he'd failed to protect. What do we do? File your own adoption petition. Immediately. Establish legal standing before Dunn's claim can be heard. Catherine stood. I'll help you with the paperwork. But you need character witnesses, proof of stable income evidence that you can provide for her welfare. And you need it fast. The hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks. 14 days to prove he was worthy of being Rosie's father. 14 days before someone tried to take her away. Wyatt. Rosie stood in the doorway, her face pale. How much had she heard? There's a man, she said, her voice trembling. A man who says he's my uncle. He's here, outside. He wants to see me. Wyatt was moving before she finished speaking. Victor Dunn stood in the yard holding his hat in his hands, wearing a smile that made Wyatt's skin crawl. He was middle-aged, well-dressed with the oily charm of a snake oil salesman. Mr. Callahan. Dunn's voice was smooth as butter. I've heard so much about you. The stranger who took such interest in my poor orphaned niece. She's not your niece. Blood says otherwise. Dunn's smile widened. Her mother Bridget was my sister. Tragic what happened. I only just learned of Thomas's death, or I'd have come sooner. Rosie's never heard of you. Children forget. It's been years since I saw her last. She was barely walking. Dunn looked past Wyatt to where Rosie stood frozen on the porch. Hello, sweetheart. Do you remember your Uncle Victor? No. Rosie's voice was small but firm. I don't know you. Of course you don't, darling, but that's all right. We'll have plenty of time to get reacquainted. His eyes slid back to Wyatt. Once the custody matter is settled. There's nothing to settle. She's staying with me. That's not your decision to make, I'm afraid. The law is quite clear. Family has first claim to orphaned children, and I am family. Dunn replaced his hat. I'll be staying at the boarding house in town. The hearing is in 2 weeks. I suggest you prepare yourself for goodbye. He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving dust and dread in his wake. Rosie was at Wyatt's side in an instant. He's lying. My mama never talked about any brother, never once. I know. You can't let him take me. Please, please, Wyatt, I'll do anything. He dropped to his knees, took her face in his hands. Listen to me. Nobody is taking you anywhere. Do you understand? I will fight this. I will fight him. I will fight anyone who tries to separate us. Promise. I promise. On Lily's memory. On everything I have. I promise. She threw herself into his arms, sobbing, and he held her tight against the fear that threatened to swallow them both. Behind them, Catherine Wells watched with calculating eyes. "I need access to public records," she said quietly to Elijah. "Birth certificates, land deeds, financial transactions. Everything you can find on Victor Dunn. I'll have it by morning." "Good, because something about this doesn't add up." She paused. "Men like Dunn don't just appear out of nowhere. Someone sent him. Someone with something to gain. Brennan and Jacobs. Almost certainly, but proving it." She shook her head. "That's going to take more than 2 weeks." The next days blurred together in a frenzy of activity. Wyatt gathered character witnesses. Elijah and Ruth Crane, Mrs. Thornton, even the school teacher who'd been working with Rosie on her letters. Catherine filed paperwork, petitions, counterclaims, anything to delay Dunn's custody hearing. But Dunn wasn't idle either. He visited the ranch twice, always with legal documents, always with that same oily smile. He brought gifts for Rosie Doll's candy, a locket he claimed had belonged to her mother. She refused to touch any of it. "He makes my skin feel dirty," she told Wyatt after the second visit. "Like something's crawling on me." "Trust that feeling. It means something." "But what if the judge believes him? What if he has more proof than we do?" "Then we'll find our own proof, whatever it takes." On the 5th day, Catherine burst into the ranch house with papers clutched in her fist. "I found it," she said breathlessly. "Victor Dunn's real name is Victor Crane, no relation to Elijah. He's a con man from Missouri, with warrants in 3 territories for fraud, forgery, and theft. The letters he has from Rosie's mother, forgeries. I compared the handwriting to documents Thomas filed with the land office. They don't match. That's enough to stop the custody hearing." "It should be, but there's more." Catherine's face was grim. "Dunn's been receiving payments from a bank account in Cheyenne. The account is owned by a holding company. That holding company is owned by another company. And that company, let me guess, Brennan and Jacobs. You're learning." She spread the papers on the table. "We have them, Wyatt. Financial proof that Dunn is a hired proxy working on their behalf to steal Rosie's inheritance." "So it's over." "Not quite." Catherine hesitated. "This evidence will stop Dunn, but it won't convict Brennan and Jacobs. They'll claim ignorance, say Dunn acted alone, sacrifice him to save themselves. And without a witness to Thomas's murder, Rosie saw it. Rosie is 8 years old. Her testimony was already dismissed once. A good lawyer will tear it apart." Catherine met his eyes. "We need more. Something concrete. Something undeniable. Where do we find that? I don't know, but I know someone who might." She led him to the church at the edge of town, where a man in preacher's robes sat alone in a pew, staring at the altar like he was waiting for God to answer a question. "Reverend Finch," Catherine said, "you sent me that letter, the one about Thomas McAllister." The Reverend didn't turn around. "I did. You know something. Something you didn't put in writing." Silence, long and heavy. "I was there," he finally said. "The day Thomas died. I saw everything." Wyatt's heart stopped. "You saw them push him. I saw them argue. Saw Brennan grab Thomas's arm. Saw Jacobs move toward him." The Reverend's voice cracked. "I hid, like a coward, and when I heard Thomas hit the ground, I ran." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because I'm a drunk and a gambler and a liar, Mr. Callahan." He finally turned, and Wyatt saw the devastation in his eyes. 10 years ago, Brennan caught me stealing from the church collection. He's held it over me ever since. If I talked, he'd destroy me. Everything I've built, everything I've become, gone. So you let a murderer go free. I let a lot of things go free. That's what cowards do." Tears streamed down the Reverend's face. "But that little girl sleeping on those steps waiting for a father who was never coming, I couldn't live with it anymore. So I wrote the letter, told Catherine everything I knew, and now," he spread his hands, "now I'm ready to face the consequences. You'll testify. I'll testify, even if it destroys me, even if Brennan follows through on every threat he's ever made." The Reverend stood suddenly, looking 10 years older. "Thomas McAllister was my friend. He deserved better than my silence. Wyatt extended his hand. Thank you, Reverend. Don't thank me yet. Brennan and Jacobs won't go down without a fight. He shook Wyatt's hand firmly. Neither will their hired gun. What hired gun? The Reverend's face went pale. You don't know they brought someone in from Colorado 3 days ago. A man named Silas Morrow. He's been watching the ranch. The name hit Wyatt like a bullet to the chest. Silas Morrow. The third man. The one who'd set the fire. The one who'd murdered Clara and Lily. The one Wyatt had been running from for 4 years. He was here. He'd found them. And now Rosie was in danger all over again. Wyatt? Catherine was watching him, alarm in her eyes. What is it? What's wrong? I need to get back to the ranch, now. He ran for his horse heart, pounding the Reverend's words echoing in his skull. He's been watching the ranch. 4 years of running. 4 years of hiding. And it had all led here to a moment he'd always known was coming. Silas Morrow hadn't just found him. He'd found Rosie. And Wyatt knew with terrible absolute certainty that only one of them would survive what came next. He pushed his horse harder, praying he wasn't already too late, praying that history wasn't about to repeat itself, praying that this time he could save the child who'd given him a reason to stop running. The ranch house was dark when he arrived, too dark, too quiet. Rosie. He burst through the door. Rosie. No answer. He searched the house, the barn, the yard. Nothing. Then he saw a note pinned to Rosie's pillow, written in handwriting he'd never seen before. You took something from me 4 years ago. Now I've taken something from you. Come alone to the old mine at midnight, or she dies like your wife did, screaming your name while the flames take her. SM. Wyatt's legs gave out. He hit the floor, the note crumpling in his fist, and for the first time in 4 years, he screamed. Wyatt couldn't breathe. The note shook in his hands, the words blurring through tears he couldn't stop. Screaming your name while the flames take her. Clara's face flashed through his mind. Lily's tiny hands reaching for him through smoke and fire. The screams that still woke him in the dead of night. No. He forced himself to his feet. Not again. Not her. He grabbed his gun belt from the hook by the door. Checked the chambers. Loaded. Ready. 4 years he'd run from this moment. 4 years of hiding, of looking over his shoulder, of never letting anyone close enough to become a target. And now Silas Morrow had found him anyway. Had found Rosie. The door burst open behind him. Wyatt! Elijah Crane stood there breathing hard. Ruth told me. She saw a man on horseback heading toward the old mine with something bundled across his saddle. It's Morrow. He has Rosie. Who the hell is Morrow? The man who killed my family. Wyatt's voice was ice. The man I've been running from for 4 years. The man who just made the last mistake of his miserable life. You can't go alone. Let me gather some men. No. Wyatt pushed past him. The note said come alone. If he sees anyone else, he'll kill her. Then what's your plan? Wyatt stopped at the door, turned back. My plan is to do what I should have done 4 years ago. His eyes were empty of everything except cold, terrible purpose. End this. He rode through darkness so thick it felt like drowning. The summer heat had broken into a storm that crackled with lightning, illuminating the path to the abandoned mine in brief, violent flashes. His mind raced faster than his horse. How had Morrow found him? After 4 years, after thousands of miles, after every precaution, Wyatt had taken how? Then it hit him. Brennan and Jacobs. They'd hired Morrow. Used their money and connections to track down exactly the kind of man who'd have a grudge against Wyatt Callahan. They couldn't know the full history, couldn't know about Clara and Lily, but they'd found the perfect weapon anyway. Bastards, Wyatt breathed. You'll answer for this, too. The mine entrance loomed ahead, a black mouth in the hillside. No lights. No sound except the rain. He dismounted, drew his gun. Morrow. His voice echoed off stone. I'm here alone, just like you wanted. Silence. Then from deep within the mine, "Come inside, Callahan. Let's finish what we started." Wyatt entered the darkness. The mine shaft stretched ahead, barely visible in the faint glow of a distant lantern. Water dripped from the ceiling. The air smelled of old earth and something else, kerosene. His boots splashed through puddles as he moved deeper. Every instinct screamed trap. But somewhere ahead, Rosie was waiting, counting on him. He wouldn't fail her, not like he'd failed Lily. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber. Morrow stood at the center lantern at his feet, casting shadows that made his face look like a skull. Behind him, Rosie sat bound to a wooden support beam, a gag in her mouth, terror in her amber eyes. "There he is." Morrow's voice was a low rasp. "The man who killed my brothers. Your brothers were murderers. They burned my house with my wife and child inside. They were doing a job. Just business. Nothing personal." Morrow spread his hands. "You made it personal when you put bullets in them. They deserved worse." "Maybe they did." Morrow's eyes glittered in the lantern light. "But you don't get to be the one who decides that. You don't get to take everything from me and then ride off into the sunset like some kind of hero." "I never rode anywhere. I ran. Every day for 4 years I ran. And I followed. Every day for 4 years." Morrow pulled a knife from his belt, began cleaning his fingernails with casual menace. "You know what kept me going? The thought of this moment. You standing there helpless watching me take something precious from you. She has nothing to do with this. Neither did my brothers, but you killed them anyway." Wyatt's gun came up. "Let her go, Morrow. This is between us." "You're right, it is." Morrow moved toward Rosie, knife glinting. "But I've learned that hurting a man directly doesn't break him. Not really. You have to hurt what he loves. That's what breaks a man. That's what makes him feel what I've felt every day since you murdered my family." "Your family murdered mine first." Details. Morrow pressed the knife against Rosie's throat. "Drop the gun, Callahan, or I open her neck right here." Wyatt's hand shook. Every fiber of his being screamed to shoot to end this monster before he could hurt Rosie. But the knife was too close. One wrong move, and he dropped the gun. "Kick it away." He kicked it. Morrow smiled, that dead, empty smile that had haunted Wyatt's nightmares. "Good boy. Now we can talk like civilized men." "What do you want?" "I want you to suffer, like I suffered, like I've been suffering for 4 years. Morrow pulled Rosie to her feet, knife still at her throat. "This girl, she matters to you." "Yes." "How much?" "More than my own life." "Good answer." Morrow's smile widened. "Then you'll understand what I'm about to do." He moved the knife from Rosie's throat to the rope binding her wrists. Cut through it with one swift motion. "Run, girl." Rosie's eyes widened. She didn't move. "I said run." Morrow shoved her toward the tunnel. "Get out of here before I change my mind." She stumbled, caught herself, looked back at Wyatt with desperate confusion. "Go, Rosie." His voice cracked. "Run. Don't stop until you reach the ranch." "But—" "Go." She ran. Her footsteps echoed through the mine, growing fainter, then disappearing entirely. Wyatt and Morrow stood alone. "Why?" Wyatt asked. "Why let her go?" "Because killing her was never the point." Morrow picked up Wyatt's gun, examined it casually. "I could have slit her throat the moment you walked in. Could have made you watch like I promised. But then I realized something." "What?" "That you'd welcome death. That you'd be relieved to have it over." Morrow's eyes met his. "And I don't want you relieved, Callahan. I want you broken. I want you to spend the rest of your life knowing that everyone you love is in danger because of you. That little girl, she'll never be safe as long as you're alive. Neither will anyone else you get close to. So what, you're going to let me live? For now." Morrow raised the gun. "But first a reminder." He fired. The bullet tore through Wyatt's shoulder, spinning him around, dropping him to his knees. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and blinding. "That's for my brothers." Morrow stood over him. "The next one, whenever I decide to deliver it, will be for me." He tossed the empty gun beside Wyatt's bleeding form. "Run again, Callahan. Run as far and as fast as you can. And know that I'll always be behind you, watching, waiting, ready to take everything the moment you let your guard down." Footsteps retreated, faded, disappeared. Wyatt lay in the dirt, blood pooling beneath him, and wondered if Morrow was right. If he should run. If staying would only bring more death, more pain, more loss. Then he heard it, a voice small and desperate echoing from the tunnel entrance. "Wyatt? Wyatt?" Rosie. She'd come back. He forced himself to his knees, then to his feet. Every movement sent agony screaming through his shoulder, but he moved anyway. Because she'd come back. Because she hadn't left him alone in the dark. Because that's what family did. He stumbled toward the light. Rosie met him at the tunnel entrance, throwing her arms around him so hard he nearly fell again. "You're bleeding. Oh God, you're bleeding so much." "I'm okay." The lie came easier than it should have. "We need to move. Can you help me walk?" She ducked under his good arm, taking as much of his weight as her small body could manage. Together, step by agonizing step, they made their way out of the mine. His horse waited where he'd left it. Rosie helped him mount, then climbed up behind him, her arms wrapped tight around his waist. "I'm sorry," she whispered as they rode. "I'm sorry I got caught. I tried to fight, but he was so fast. Not your fault. None of this is your fault. But if I hadn't, Rosie." He turned his head enough to see her face. "The only person at fault here is Silas Morrow, and the men who hired him. Brennan and Jacobs, yes. Then we make them pay." Her voice hardened. "All of them. For my pa. For your family. For everything." He almost smiled. Almost. "That's the plan." They made it to the ranch just as dawn broke. Elijah and Ruth rushed out to meet them, Catherine close behind. "Dear God!" Ruth's face went white when she saw the blood. "Inside. Now. I'll send someone for the doctor." They got him to a bed. Ruth cut away his shirt, examined the wound with hands that shook only slightly. "Bullet went clean through," she said. "Missed the bone. You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky. You're alive. That girl's alive. Everything else can be fixed." The doctor arrived an hour later, an old man with steady hands and eyes that had seen worse. He cleaned the wound, stitched it shut, wrapped it in clean bandages. "Rest," he said. 2 weeks minimum. That shoulder moves too much, it'll tear open and you'll bleed out." "I can't rest. There's Wyatt." Catherine stepped forward. "Let us handle it. Reverend Finch is ready to testify. I have the financial records connecting Dunn to Brennan and Jacobs. We have enough to bring charges. Morrow's still out there. And Sheriff Webb isn't going to lift a finger to find him, but the territorial marshal will." Catherine's expression was fierce. "I sent word last night. Help is coming. Real help. You just need to stay alive long enough for it to arrive." Rosie appeared at the bedside. She'd been cleaned up, changed into fresh clothes, but her eyes still held shadows that might never fully lift. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I don't care what anyone says. I'm staying right here." Wyatt reached for her hand with his good arm. "Okay. Okay, that's it, you're not going to argue. Would it work if I did no? Then okay." He squeezed her fingers. "Stay." She pulled up a chair, positioned it close enough to touch him, and settled in like she was preparing for a siege. "I was scared," she said quietly. "In the mine, when he had that knife at my throat, I thought I was going to die." "I know. But I wasn't scared of dying. Not really." She looked at him with those amber eyes. "I was scared that you'd blame yourself. That you'd think it was your fault, like you think everything is your fault." "Rosie, it's not your fault, Wyatt. The fire that killed your family. My pa's murder. Morrow coming after us. None of it is your fault. Her voice cracked. Bad men do bad things. That's on them, not on the people they hurt. Wyatt felt something break open inside him, something he'd been carrying for 4 years, a weight so heavy he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand straight. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She almost smiled. You kept telling me my pa's death wasn't my fault, that waiting on those steps didn't make me weak, that sometimes things happen and all we can do is survive them. She shrugged. I figured maybe you needed to hear it too. He pulled her close, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. She smelled like soap and summer grass and everything he thought he'd lost forever. I love you, he said. You know that, right? I know. Her voice was muffled against his chest. I love you too. 3 words. 3 simple words that meant everything. That changed everything. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Wyatt's life. Not because of the wound, though, that hurt plenty. Not because of Morrow still out there somewhere waiting for his moment to strike. Because the custody hearing for Rosie was scheduled, and Victor Dunn hadn't given up. He appeared at the courthouse in Helena, looking respectable and wronged spinning tales about a cruel stranger who'd stolen his niece from her rightful family. Catherine destroyed him. She presented the financial records showing payments from Brennan and Jacobs. She produced his criminal history from Missouri. She brought in witnesses who'd seen him meeting with Jacobs in secret. And then she called Reverend Finch. The Reverend walked into that courtroom like a man going to his execution. His hands shook. His voice trembled. But he told the truth. All of it. He described the argument on the scaffolding. Described Brennan grabbing Thomas's arm. Described Jacobs pushing deliberate and vicious. Described Thomas McAllister falling to his death while 2 wealthy men watched and did nothing to help. The courtroom erupted. Dunn tried to flee. Court officers caught him at the door. Brennan and Jacobs, who'd come expecting an easy victory, found themselves facing murder charges instead. You can't do this, Brennan screamed as deputies dragged him away. We own this town. We own everyone. Not anymore, Catherine said quietly. Not anymore. Wyatt watched from the back of the courtroom, arm in a sling, Rosie pressed close against his side. Is it over? She whispered. Really over? Not quite. There's still the trial. Still. Mr. Callahan. He turned. The territorial marshal approached a tall man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much death to be surprised by anything. We found Silas Morrow. Wyatt's heart stopped. Where? Dead. Hanging from a tree about 10 miles south of here. Note in his pocket said he couldn't live with what he'd done. Couldn't face the man he'd become. The marshal paused. Funny thing, though. The hanging looked professional. Too professional for a suicide. What are you saying? I'm saying someone wanted Morrow silenced, permanently. The marshal's eyes were hard. Brennan and Jacobs, most likely, tying up loose ends before the trial. So he's really gone. He's really gone. The marshal studied Wyatt's face. You can stop running now, Mr. Callahan. Whatever demons were chasing you, they're dead and buried. Dead and buried. 4 years of fear. 4 years of looking over his shoulder. 4 years of running from a monster who'd haunted his every step. Over. Just like that. Wyatt's knees went weak. He sat down heavily on the nearest bench, staring at nothing. Rosie slipped her hand into his. You're free, she said softly. We're free. I don't... He swallowed hard. I don't know how to be free. We'll figure it out together. She leaned her head against his good shoulder. That's what families do. Families. The word hit him like a revelation. He had a family again. Broken and scarred and unconventional but real. A daughter who loved him despite every wall he'd built. A future that stretched beyond the next town, the next escape, the next desperate attempt to outrun his past. The adoption hearing, he said suddenly. When is it? Tomorrow morning. Catherine appeared beside them. Judge Morrison agreed to expedite given the circumstances. And Dunn's custody claim, Dismissed. Along with his freedom. He's facing fraud charges in 3 territories. Wyatt looked at Rosie. You ready? I've been ready since the day you stopped walking past me. She grinned, the first real full grin he'd ever seen from her. Let's make it official. The next morning, in a small courthouse in Helena, Wyatt Callahan stood before Judge Morrison and answered questions about his ability to provide for a child. Yes, he had steady employment. Yes, he had a home. Yes, he understood the responsibilities of parenthood. Yes, he loved Rosie McAllister more than his own life. And you, Miss McAllister. The judge turned to Rosie. Do you want Mr. Callahan to be your legal father? Yes, sir. You understand this is permanent, that it changes your name, your family, everything. Yes, sir. Rosie's voice was steady. But my name's already been changed by what we've been through. The papers are just catching up. The judge almost smiled. Well said. He signed the documents, stamped them, made it official. Congratulations, Mr. Callahan. You are now the legal father of Rosie McAllister Callahan. Rosie threw her arms around Wyatt so hard he nearly fell over. I have a family, she whispered. A real family. You always did. He held her tight. We just didn't have the papers to prove it. They walked out of that courthouse into bright summer sunshine. Father and daughter, both orphaned, both scarred, both survivors. But no longer alone. Never alone again. Elijah and Ruth waited by the wagon beaming. Mrs. Thornton dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Even Catherine Wells smiled a real smile that softened her sharp features. Welcome to the family, Rosie Callahan, Ruth said. Thank you. Rosie looked up at Wyatt. Can we go home now? Home. The word didn't hurt anymore. Didn't feel like a trap or a target or something that would be taken from him the moment he let his guard down. It felt like a promise, a beginning, a reason to stop running and start living. Yeah, Wyatt said, his voice rough with emotion. Let's go home. They climbed into the wagon, Rosie pressed against his side, chattering about all the things she wanted to do when they got back to the ranch. I want to learn to ride properly, and I want to help with the cattle. And Mrs. Crane promised to teach me to make pie, real pie, not the kind you burn when you try. I don't burn pie. You burn everything. That's not... He stopped. Okay, that's a little true. She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, like the first rain after a long drought. Like hope given a voice. Wyatt put his arm around her and watched the Montana landscape roll by. His shoulder ached, his heart was full. And somewhere ahead, a cabin waited, 2 rooms, solid roof, big enough for a man and his daughter. Big enough for a family. Wyatt, yeah, thank you. For stopping. For seeing me when no one else did. For fighting for me even when it was hard. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you for letting me. The wagon rolled on toward home. Toward the future. Toward whatever came next. Together. Summer faded into autumn, and with it came the trial that would determine whether Brennan and Jacobs would pay for Thomas McAllister's murder. Wyatt sat in the courtroom every day, Rosie beside him, watching as witness after witness took the stand. Ranch hands who'd seen Brennan threaten Thomas. Townspeople who'd heard Jacobs brag about dealing with troublemakers. Bank records showing suspicious transfers. Land deeds proving the motive. And Reverend Finch, who told the truth about what he'd witnessed, even as his hands shook and his voice cracked. They pushed him, the Reverend said, tears streaming down his weathered face. God forgive me for staying silent so long, but I saw them push Thomas McAllister to his death. Brennan's lawyer tried to discredit him, brought up his drinking, his gambling debts, his history of lies. But the jury had eyes. They could see the guilt written on Brennan's face, the cold calculation in Jacobs's stare. 3 days of testimony, 6 hours of deliberation. Guilty, both of them. First-degree murder. When the verdict was read, Rosie grabbed Wyatt's hand so hard her knuckles went white. They did it, she whispered. They actually did it. Justice, Wyatt said quietly. Not revenge, justice. Is there a difference? Yeah. He looked at the two men being led away in chains. Revenge would have felt better. Justice just feels right. Outside the courthouse, Mrs. Thornton waited with tears in her eyes. "Thomas can rest now," she said, pulling Rosie into a fierce hug. "Your papa can finally rest." "I know." Rosie's voice was muffled against the older woman's shoulder. "I can feel it." That evening, Wyatt took Rosie to her father's grave for the first time since everything began. They stood together in the fading light, the autumn wind cool against their faces. "Hi, Pa," Rosie said softly. "It's me, Rosie." Silence. Just the wind and the distant call of birds heading south. "They caught the men who hurt you. They're going to prison for a long time. Maybe forever." She paused. "I wanted you to know." Wyatt stayed quiet, giving her space. "I have a new family now. Wyatt, he's my pa now. Legally and everything." Her voice caught. "But you're still my papa. You'll always be my papa. Wyatt knows that. He says there's room enough in my heart for both." She knelt, placed a small wooden rabbit on the grave, the one Wyatt had given her, the one that had belonged to Lily. "This is for you. It was precious to someone else's daughter, and now it's a gift from yours." She pressed her hand against the earth. "I love you, Papa. I'll make you proud. I promise." She stood, wiped her eyes, and walked back to where Wyatt waited. "You gave him Mr. Hop," he said gently. "He needed it more than me." She slipped her hand into his. "Besides, I've got something better now." "What's that?" "You." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, comfortable. Rosie fell asleep against Wyatt's shoulder, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. He carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and sat in the chair by her door, the same chair he'd sat in that first night at the boarding house, when everything was uncertain and terrifying. How far they'd come since then. "You're thinking too loud again." He looked up. Rosie was watching him with sleepy eyes. "Thought you were asleep." "I was." "Then I felt you worrying." She yawned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." "Liar." He almost smiled. "I was thinking about the future, about what comes next. We live here. I go to school. You work with the horses. Mrs. Crane teaches me to make pie." She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. "What else is there?" "I don't know. That's what scares me." Rosie sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Wyatt, can I tell you something?" "Always." "Before you found me, I used to dream about what would happen after Pa came back. We'd get a house, I'd go to school. He'd build beautiful furniture, and people would come from all over to buy it. I had it all planned out." "That sounds nice." "It was. But it was also just a dream. Something I held on to because the real world was too hard." She met his eyes. "Now I don't dream about the future. I just live it. One day at a time. And somehow that's better. That's more real." "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." She lay back down, pulled the blanket to her chin. "Stop worrying about tomorrow, Wyatt. Today is enough. Today is good. Today is enough." He sat with those words long after she fell asleep. The next months passed in a rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Wyatt worked the ranch alongside Elijah's men, earning their respect with his skill and his silence. Rosie started school, making friends, coming home with stories about Miss Peterson's impossible arithmetic and Annie Crawford's terrible singing. They ate dinner together every night, talked about everything and nothing, built something that felt more like home with each passing day. But Wyatt couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. "You're restless," Elijah said one morning, watching Wyatt pace the barn. "I've seen that look before, in soldiers coming back from war, in men who've spent too long running to know how to stand still." "I don't know what's wrong with me." "I do." Elijah leaned against a post, arms crossed. "You're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for something bad to happen because good things don't last. Not for men like you." "Men like me?" "Survivors, fighters, People who've been through hell and made it out the other side. Elijah's eyes were kind but unflinching. You don't trust happiness, Callahan. You keep one hand on your gun even when there's no enemy in sight. Wyatt had no response, because it was true. Here's something I learned the hard way, Elijah continued. Happiness isn't a reward for suffering. It's not something you earn by hurting enough. It's just a choice. A choice to let yourself have it even when every instinct screams that you don't deserve it. And if I lose it, if something happens to Rosie to this life, then you'll survive that too, because that's what you do. Elijah pushed off the post. But you might also miss out on years of joy because you were too busy bracing for pain that never came. Think about that. He walked away, leaving Wyatt alone with thoughts that cut deeper than any knife. That evening, Wyatt found Rosie in the barn, brushing down her favorite mare. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You always can. Are you happy, really happy living here with me?" She stopped brushing, turned to face him with those amber eyes that saw too much. "Where's this coming from? Just answer the question." Rosie set down the brush, walked to where he stood, looked up at him with an expression that was somehow both ancient and impossibly young. "I was happy once before," she said slowly. "With Pa. It was a different kind of happy, smaller maybe, simpler, just the two of us against the world. And now it's bigger, scarier, because there's more to lose." She reached up, touched his face, the way a daughter touches a father she's afraid of losing. But that's what makes it real, isn't it? The fear, the risk. If you can't lose something, you can't really have it. "I don't deserve you," Wyatt said, his voice rough. "Probably not." She grinned. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He pulled her into a hug, held her tight, and let himself feel something he'd been fighting for months. Hope. Real hope. The kind that didn't wait for permission or proof. The kind that just was. Winter came early that year, blanketing the ranch in white, turning the world into a quiet, frozen wonderland. On Christmas Eve, the Crane household gathered in the main house for a celebration that Wyatt hadn't expected to be part of. "This is too much," he protested as Ruth handed him a wrapped package. "We didn't bring anything. You brought yourselves. That's enough." Ruth's eyes sparkled. "Open it." Inside was a pocket watch, old and beautiful, with an inscription on the inside cover, to Wyatt, who finally stopped running. "With gratitude, Elijah and Ruth." Wyatt couldn't speak. "It was my father's," Elijah said gruffly. "He'd want you to have it. A man needs a way to mark time when he's planning on staying somewhere long enough for time to matter." Rosie bounced beside him, practically vibrating with excitement. "Open mine, open mine." He unwrapped her gift carefully. Inside was a drawing, crude but recognizable. Two figures standing in front of a cabin. One tall, one small, both smiling. "That's us," Rosie said unnecessarily. "That's home. It's perfect." His voice came out hoarse. "It's absolutely perfect." Later, after the celebration wound down and the house grew quiet, Wyatt sat on the cabin porch watching stars emerge in the cold, clear sky. Rosie appeared beside him, wrapped in a blanket, her breath forming clouds in the air. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "Thinking too loud." She settled into the chair beside his. "What is it this time?" "I was thinking about last Christmas. I don't even remember where I was. Some town, some saloon. Alone." "Sounds sad." It was. He looked at her. "And now I'm here. With you. With a family. With a home." He shook his head slowly. "I still don't understand how it happened." "It happened because you stopped." Rosie's voice was matter of fact. "You saw me sitting on those steps, and instead of walking past like everyone else, you stopped. Everything else, all of this came from that one decision. That simple, and that hard." She pulled the blanket tighter. "Most people spend their whole lives walking past things that matter. You didn't. That's the difference. The silence that followed was comfortable, full, complete. Wyatt. Yeah. I'm glad you stopped. Me too, Rosie. Me too. Spring came slowly, reluctantly, like it wasn't sure Montana deserved warmth after such a brutal winter. But when it finally arrived, it brought something Wyatt hadn't anticipated. A letter. It's from Kansas, Mrs. Thornton said, pressing it into his hand during a visit to town. Came through the postal office 3 days ago. Wyatt stared at the envelope. The return address was familiar, the town where Clara and Lily were buried. The town he'd fled 4 years ago and never looked back. Bad news? Rosie asked, reading his expression. I don't know yet. He opened it with hands that weren't quite steady. Dear Mr. Callahan, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I was a friend of your wife Clara. I've been trying to find you for 3 years and only recently learned your whereabouts through the Territorial Marshal's office. Clara asked me to give you something. Before she died, she managed to save a letter she'd written for you. She gave it to me through the window, moments before the house collapsed. I've kept it safe all this time, waiting for a chance to deliver it. If you're willing, I'd like to bring it to you. Clara made me promise it would reach your hands, and it's a promise I intend to keep. With hope, Sarah Mitchell. Wyatt read the letter twice, 3 times. What is it? Rosie asked softly. A letter from my wife, written the night she died. Rosie's eyes went wide. That's... I know. Are you going to write back, let this Sarah come? Wyatt looked at the letter, at Clara's name written in a stranger's hand, at 4 years of grief and guilt and questions that never got answered. Yes, he said finally. I'm going to write back. Sarah Mitchell arrived 3 weeks later, a small woman with kind eyes and gray threading through her hair. She handed Wyatt a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, scorched at one corner. She was brave, Sarah said. So brave. Even with the fire all around her, she was thinking of you, wanting to make sure you knew. Knew what? You'll see. Read it when you're ready. That night, alone in the cabin, while Rosie slept, Wyatt opened the letter his wife had written 4 years ago. My dearest Wyatt, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for leaving you. But I need you to know something. I need you to understand, even if I can't be there to tell you myself. This wasn't your fault. Not any of it. Not the fire. Not my death. Not Lily's. I know you, Wyatt Callahan. I know you'll blame yourself. I know you'll run, because running is easier than staying still with grief that feels like it will swallow you whole. But please, please don't run forever. You have so much love to give. So much goodness in you. Don't let what happened to us bury that forever. Find someone to love. Find a purpose. Find a reason to wake up in the morning that isn't just survival. Live, Wyatt. Really live. That's all I want for you. That's all I've ever wanted. I love you. I will always love you. But love isn't a cage. It's a gift. And the best way you can honor what we had is to let yourself be happy again. Be happy. Find your way home. Forever yours. Clara. Wyatt read the letter through tears that wouldn't stop. Clara's voice reaching across 4 years, and death itself telling him exactly what he needed to hear, giving him permission, giving him peace. Wyatt! Rosie stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Are you crying? Yeah. He didn't try to hide it. Yeah, I am. She crossed to him, climbed into his lap like she was still small enough to fit there, and wrapped her arms around his neck. Good tears or bad tears? Good tears. He held her close. Really good tears. What did the letter say? It said to be happy. To find my way home. Rosie pulled back, looked at him with those amber eyes. Did you find your way home? Wyatt thought about everything that had happened. The store steps where he'd first seen her. The storm that had brought them together. The cabin that had become their haven. The battles they'd fought and won. Yeah. he said softly. I did. Rosie smiled that full, bright smile that transformed her whole face. Good, because I found mine too. She fell asleep in his arms, and Wyatt held her watching the fire burn low, feeling something settle in his chest that had been restless for 4 years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that didn't come from running or fighting or surviving. The kind that came from finally allowing himself to stay. The next morning, he took Rosie to the hill overlooking the ranch. The whole valley spread out below them, the cabin, the main house, the corrals and barns, and endless rolling grassland. I want to show you something, he said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Elijah gave this to me yesterday. Rosie took the paper, unfolded it. Her eyes went wide. This is a deed for the cabin and the land around it. 10 acres, ours, free and clear. Wyatt's voice was steady. Elijah says a man needs to own something to really put down roots. Said it was payment for saving his pasture last summer. I think it was just an excuse to give us a gift. We own this. Rosie looked at him, disbelief and joy warring in her expression. This is really ours, forever. She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. We have a home, Wyatt, a real home, that nobody can take away. We do. He held her tight. We really do. They stood on that hill for a long time, father and daughter, looking out at the land that was now theirs. At the future that stretched ahead of them, full of possibility. Wyatt? Yeah. What do we do now? He smiled. For once, the question didn't scare him. Now we live, Rosie. We just live. And they did. 1 year later, on a summer evening, exactly like the one when Wyatt had first ridden into Silver Creek, they sat on the cabin porch watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Rosie was taller now, stronger. Her hair had grown long, and Ruth had taught her to braid it. She read books faster than Wyatt could buy them. She rode horses better than most of the ranch hands. She laughed easily, freely, like a child who'd never known fear. But she still sat beside him every evening. Still slipped her hand into his when she needed comfort. Still called him by name instead of Pa, and that was okay, more than okay. I was thinking, she said, breaking the comfortable silence. Dangerous pastime. I was thinking about that first day, when you stopped at the store, when you asked if I was waiting for someone. What about it? You could have kept walking, like everyone else, but you didn't. She turned to face him. Why? What made you stop? Wyatt thought about it, really thought the way he hadn't let himself think in a long time. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I saw something in you that reminded me of myself. Maybe I was just tired of running. Maybe God or fate or whatever you want to call it put you in my path for a reason. You believe in God. I believe in something. Something that brought us together. Something that gave me a reason to stop when I'd spent 4 years convincing myself there wasn't one. Rosie nodded slowly. I used to think my papa dying was the worst thing that could happen to me. That nothing good could ever come from something so horrible. She paused. I was wrong. What do you mean? If Papa hadn't died, you would have kept riding. We never would have met. I'd still be that girl on the steps waiting for something that was never coming. She looked at him with those amber eyes, older now, wiser, but still full of the same fierce determination he'd seen that first day. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things, if we're brave enough to let them. Wyatt felt his throat tighten. You're the bravest person I know, Rosie Callahan. I learned from the best. She grinned. Even if he does burn everything he cooks. I've gotten better. You've gotten marginally less terrible. Same thing. She laughed, and the sound filled the evening air, mixed with the calls of birds and the distant lowing of cattle. This was their life now. This was home. Not a place they'd stumbled into by accident, but one they'd chosen, fought for, earned. Wyatt. Yeah. I love you. I love you too, Rosie. I know. She leaned against his shoulder. I just like hearing you say it. They sat together until the stars came out, until the fireflies emerged to dance in the warm summer darkness. Two people who'd found each other when they'd both stopped looking. Two people who'd become a family, not through blood, but through choice. Two people who'd finally, after so much loss and pain and wandering, found their way home. And home wasn't just a cabin on 10 acres of Montana land. Home was the choice to stay. Home was the courage to love again. Home was a red-headed girl with amber eyes who'd taught a broken man that some chains weren't prisons at all. Some chains were the only thing keeping you from falling apart. Wyatt Callahan had spent 4 years running from his past. But on a summer evening in 1880, sitting on a porch with his daughter beside him and the future stretching out like an endless Montana sky, he finally understood what Clara had been trying to tell him. Home isn't where you're born. Home isn't where you run to. Home is where you choose to stay. And Wyatt Callahan was done running. He was home. They both were. Forever.